Oh, may I have just 1 second to respond to that? Obviously, from some of the questions we're hearing from the Democrats, they care more about a lot of other countries than America. And we see
to promote the American ideals of freedom and democracy. So I wanted to start just by confirming, do you support democracy or authoritarianism?
I think that's pretty obvious. I support freedom and democracy.
Democracy, okay? Think he's the greatest of all
I don't have
time?
an opinion on what Viktor Orban is doing in Hungary.
It's not up for debate.
Other than I
It's
know
a
he puts his
fact
people
that has been
first.
documented by numerous organizations.
By who?
Now,
Can you
not
tell me
only
where that
have you
fact come
supported,
from?
not only
Where
have
did
you
that
supported,
fact come
excuse
from,
me, Ms. Lake,
Representative?
I'm sorry to remind you, you are not a governor. You're not even a candidate for governor. You're here, and this is my time.
You obviously don't like our ally Hungary. I think that
I'm
the
asking
people have
you
voted
if
for him,
you
and the
think
people of
that it's
Hungary will decide.
appropriate. Ms. Lake, it is my
Welcome to America Viewpoint, where we speak the truth, defend our freedoms, and fight for the values that made this nation great. No censorship, no woke spin, just bold, unfiltered commentary from real Americans who love this country. If you're tired of the lies and ready to stand for faith, family, and freedom, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the Liberty Bell, because this is where the fight begins.
Ms. Jayapal from Washington for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Ms. Lake. The U.S. Agency for Global Media is tasked with providing unbiased news worldwide to over 427 million listeners, many of whom live in countries without freedom of press or freedom of the speech. And it is your job to promote the American ideals of freedom and democracy. So I wanted to start just by confirming, do you support democracy or authoritarianism?
I think that's pretty obvious. I support freedom and democracy.
Democracy. Great. Would you agree that accepting the results of a fair and free election are critical to a functioning democracy?
Would you agree that standing up and cheering for a cancer survivor would have been the nice thing to do?
Ms. Lake, this is my time.
Okay.
Would you accept that accepting the results of a free and fair election are critical to a functioning democracy? It's a yes or no question. Do you think it's essential for democracy to have a free and fair election?
We need free and fair elections.
Free and fair elections, great.
Have
Thank
them.
you so much. And yet, you have, to this day, refused to acknowledge that President Trump lost the 2020 election, something that even members of President Trump's own Justice Department have admitted and multiple lawsuits have shown. And we heard my colleague from Arizona talk about what happened in Arizona. So it concerns me that you are now tasked with this responsibility of ensuring democracy around the world when you won't even accept a free and fair election. I'm also concerned by your ability to promote the American ideals of freedom and democracy, given your record defending and praising dictators. Let's look at Hungary. You previously stated that Hungary is, quote, doing it right, and that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban was, quote, the greatest in America, greatest in caps, and, quote, and equal to President Trump. Do you stand by those statements?
I think that Viktor Orban has done a very good job at protecting his people and protecting the Hungarian culture.
And so,
I think
Ms. Lake,
if you ask people in Europe, other parts of
question
Europe,
here is very
they
simple.
would be wishing that their leaders stood up for their people.
Is Viktor Orban the greatest in Europe? Yes or no?
I think he's done the best job in Europe, yes.
Okay, and so even Secretary Rubio acknowledged in a 2019 letter that under Orban, Hungary took a downward democratic trajectory, and yet you insist that Hungary is doing it right. I want to cover some of the policies that Mr. Orban is responsible for. Would you consider banning LGBTQ pride parades like Viktor Orban has done in Hungary as doing it right, recognizing that pride parades are protected under the First Amendment?
What does this have to do with the U.S. Agency for Global
I'm asking you whether you support the policies of dictators and authoritarians or whether you support democracy. You have said that Viktor Orban is the greatest in Europe. So do you think that Viktor Orban is doing it right when he bans pride parades?
I think Viktor Orban has put the people of his country first.
So the answer is yes, you
to
think it's
discuss
appropriate
Viktor
that
Orban.
he's banning pride parades and using facial recognition technology to actually profile people that go to those parades. How about the fact that Orban and his party control 80% of Hungary's media market.
Are we here
Is
talking
that
about
level,
Hungary?
Yes, we are.
Are we here
Is that
talking about
level,
Hungary?
Yes, we are, because guess what? Your agency actually is responsible for other countries
Hungary
and
is an
unbiased
ally. Can I
news.
remind you that Hungary is an ally of America?
Oh, and so you think that it's okay that Viktor Orban, the greatest in Europe, according to you, controls 80% of Hungary's media market? Is that level, free, and fair reporting?
I don't. You obviously don't like our ally Hungary. I think that
I'm
the
asking
people have
you
voted
if
for him,
you
and the
think
people of
that it's
Hungary will decide.
appropriate. Ms. Lake, it is my time. I'm asking you if it is appropriate that a country, Viktor Orban's government, controls 80% of Hungary's media market. It's just a yes or a no. Do you think that's okay? Think he's the greatest of all
I don't have
time?
an opinion on what Viktor Orban is doing in Hungary.
It's not up for
Other
debate.
than I
It's
know
a
he puts his
fact
people
that has been
first.
documented by numerous organizations.
who?
Now,
Can
not
you tell me
only
where that
have you
fact come
supported,
from?
not only
Where
have
did
you
that
supported,
fact come
excuse
from,
me, Ms. Lake,
Representative?
I'm sorry to remind you, you are not a governor, you're not even a candidate for governor, you're here, and this is my time. Not only have you supported dictators that have supported policies that erode democracy, you also spread claims promoted by Russian state media that the Pentagon was funding bioweapon labs in Ukraine. These claims have been proven resoundingly false, even by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Do you still stand by that prior
Look,
statement, Ms. Lake?
I know that many members of Congress care more about
Do
funding
you
Ukraine
stand
than
by that statement,
order?
which is clearly a lie?
I know that
You are
voted.
responsible for an agency that is supposed to promote truth, and yet, over and over again, you are promoting dictators and authoritarians and lies. So I am asking you if you stand by the statement that you made that was promoted by Russian state media that the Pentagon was funding bioweapon labs in Ukraine. Proven false by Marco Rubio. Do you stand by that
I
statement?
understand you're trying to get a fundraising video here.
Okay,
So
well,
let me
you
help
clearly
make-
don't
let me
understand that
reminding
you
the
are
people-
actually
time
here
has
bef-
expired.
District.
before
Your time
Congress. Mr.
expired, Ms.
Chairman,
Jayapal.
I just want to say
you had
that
more than enough time. I gave you a few extra
I
seconds,
understand,
and your time
and
has expired.
unfortunately,
and I now recognize Representative
Ms. Lake
Davidson.
is not responding
Can
to
I
the
have
questions.
just 1 second to respond? Because who is going to be speaking
Representative
next?
Davidson is next.
Oh, may I have just 1 second to respond to that? Obviously, from some of the questions we're hearing from the Democrats, they care more about a lot of other countries than America. And we've seen
So let's talk about what just happened in Congress, or better yet, what just didn't happen, an honest conversation. Instead of a serious discussion on the U.S. Agency for Global Media and its mission to promote freedom and democracy worldwide, what we witnessed was a full-on ideological ambush against Kari Lake, a woman who's never been afraid to speak truth to power. Representative Pramila Jayapal, a card-carrying member of the progressive elite, used her time not to ask thoughtful questions, but to run a personal inquisition. Let's break this down step by step, because this wasn't a hearing, folks. This was a political performance. First, Jayapal opens with a question that sounds harmless on the surface. Do you support democracy or authoritarianism? It's a loaded question. Of course, Kari answers that she supports democracy and freedom, like every red-blooded American would. But that wasn't enough. Jayapal immediately pivots to what the left obsesses over, the 2020 election. Now here's the thing, and listen closely. Kari Lake has every constitutional right to question the integrity of any election in this country. We were founded on the idea that governments derive their power from the consent of the governed. And when people feel that consent is violated, they have the right and the duty to speak up. Yet Jayapal uses this hearing to smear Kari as unfit to represent American ideals. Why? Because she's not parroting the official narrative. Let's get real here. Is questioning an election more dangerous than censoring Americans? Than labeling parents as domestic threats for standing up at school boards? Than having a government media complex that buries stories and silences voices? Kari Lake isn't undermining democracy. She's demanding accountability. That's exactly what democracy needs. Then, Jayapal goes after her for complimenting Hungary's Viktor Orban. She says Lake called him the greatest in Europe. So what? Let's ask a better question. Why do so many world leaders fail to defend their people, their borders, and their culture the way Orban has? Now, we don't have to agree with every policy Hungary implements. That's not the point. The point is that their government actually prioritizes their citizens. something we're not seeing here in the U.S. under this current leadership. Jayapal tries to twist Orban's policies, bringing up LGBTQ parades, media regulation, and surveillance, and uses those issues to claim Lake is supporting a dictator. But guess what? The U.S. Agency for Global Media is supposed to promote American values, not cater to globalist ideology. Lake's answer was on point. What does this have to do with the U.S. agency? And she's right. Why is a sitting member of Congress obsessing over the internal policy of Hungary instead of asking how we can defend American ideals abroad? Or better yet, right here at home. But the most telling moment was when Jayapal tried to trap Lake with one of the oldest tricks in the DC playbook, accuse her of spreading Russian disinformation. Why? Because Kari once questioned whether U.S. tax dollars were going to biolabs in Ukraine. That's not a lie. That's a legitimate concern, one shared by many Americans, including members of Congress and investigative journalists. But Jayapal wants you to believe that raising those concerns makes you a traitor. Let me be clear. Asking questions is not un-American. Blind obedience is. Jayapal wants a world where you're only allowed to say what the fact-checkers approve, where dissent is dangerous, and freedom of speech is limited to the government's talking points. That's not democracy. That's soft totalitarianism dressed up as civic responsibility. And let's not forget the cheap shot at the end, when Jayapal reminds Kari Lake that she's not even a candidate. That right there tells you everything you need to know. This wasn't about public service. This was about power. Jayapal couldn't debate Lake on principle, so she tried to strip her of legitimacy. But here's the thing the left doesn't understand. You don't need a title to speak truth. You don't need an office to love this country. And you don't need permission to fight for freedom. Kari Lake has more courage in 5 minutes than most of Washington has shown in 5 years. She stared down a political firing squad and didn't blink. And that's why they fear her. Because she represents a growing wave of Americans, patriots, who are tired of being told to sit down, shut up, and comply. We're done. We're rising. And we're taking back the narrative. You can cancel our accounts. You can silence our posts. But you'll never cancel the truth. This is America Viewpoint, where we don't whisper, we roar. We stand tall, speak loud, and never back down from defending truth and liberty. If this message fired you up, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the fight for America doesn't end when the video does. Until next time, stay strong, stay free, and may God bless the United States of America.